This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Roundtable. I am Robin Reed. I am joined by Arnold Furious.
Hey.
And Ollie Court.
Hello there.
2 in a row with all three of us. That's first time in a long time, probably.
I honestly don't remember the last time we managed like the full roundtable 2 in a row. It was last year. So we're like 9 months into that year. Somebody has actually had a baby since then.
BritWres had, well, I say BritWres. Wrestling in Britain had a very big weekend over the last weekend. I think it was Ian Seaton who put the tweet out saying, man, it's amazing that there's 2 huge shows going on the same weekend in Britain. But a couple of years ago, I'd have really thought it would have been 2 British companies doing that sort of thing. But, you know, that's where we are. And Summer Sizzler happened. Royal Quest happened. NXT FakeOver Cardiff happened. It was a big thing. There's some news. We're going to cover all of it. I was there. Arm was there. Ollie was there for half of it.
The Japanese half.
The good half.
Yeah, let's get straight to it. Summer Sizzler. There's one match in particular that, you know, is going to be generating all the conversation. It's a controversial one. If you follow anyone on Twitter from BritWres, you'll have seen a lot of arguing back and forth, a lot of anger about this one. Ospreay versus David Starr. Now, Ollie, I'm going to need you to hold Arm back. He's probably ready to rant, ready to explode, but I need you to do a desperado on Azuka while I set it up.
I'll keep him at bay, but his hand is on his forehead. He's ready to blow.
This was an incredible match for the first half hour. It's 2 of the best wrestlers in the world going at it. Half an hour of amazing action, followed by 15 minutes of absolute Attitude Era, McMahon, control of the company, main event storyline bullshit for 15 minutes. Absolute slapstick stuff. The first half hour was amazing. The last 15 minutes, I absolutely hated. Go for it.
Did it really go 15 minutes at the end?
Maybe 10, but it was a long. It was just more and more and more and more, wasn't it?
I don't know because I walked out. So what I saw was the ref bump, the Quilden getting chased around the ring bit, trying to do the boxing shirt, jacket off, and I remember screaming, "Fuck this bullshit!" And I walked out. So I actually don't know how much worse it got. So you'd probably have to explain.
I think you walked out like during the finish. Like he had him up for the Stormbreaker, and that's as you seem to be walking out to me, and that was the actual finish.
There's more controversy as to Arn's whereabouts than
I didn't even look back, so I don't. No, that may have been the case, but it felt like I was in the pub for quite a long time before anyone else turned up.
Well, there was kind of like a post-match with Starr like on his knees and stuff. But yeah, in case we haven't made it clear, Will Ospreay beat David Starr to kick David Starr out the company. We'll see how long that lasts, but it's an interesting thing.
Not very long, I would imagine. It's everything that WWE do that I hate, which is why I don't watch the company. I don't need that in my wrestling. I've never gone to watch Rev Pro to watch all this rinky-dink bullshit with like the Benny Hill chase around the ring and all the fucking multiple ref bumps. That's not why I watch these smaller companies. And the smaller companies that do that kind of thing, ICW, I don't watch. So there's a pattern emerging there. I said to, I think it was Eddie Sideburns, I said, I'm fucking done with this company. Because if you put on that kind of bullshit in the main event, then what's to stop you doing it again? And I find it very frustrating that Rev Pro this year have drawn 2 massive houses, this one and the one for Pac versus Ospreay, and both times they fucked it. And I know they put themselves in a position where the big draw was a match where like one guy probably couldn't beat the other one, but that's exactly the problem that he's got. He painted himself into a corner both times. There was no way out of it this time because there's no way that Ospreay was losing that match. So what was the point of booking it? If you can't do a finish, what's the point? Especially when the whole angle that they spent 2 years building towards was this ownership of the company business, which honestly is a load of old bollocks anyway. And I feel a great deal of sympathy towards the wrestlers because I thought, as you said, Rob, Ospreay and Starr had an absolutely out-of-this-world great match. I said to whoever was stood next to me, I think it was Gary, that I thought it was European Match of the Year. Hands down, it was that good. And then it just went completely off the rails. And that's not either of the wrestlers' fault. That's down to the booking. And I know some people have been defending it, saying that it's kind of like that's sports entertainment. That's fine, that is. It's not. That's not why I'm there. If I was at a WWE show and that happened, I'd be like, it's WWE. What can you do? And I'd have just probably wouldn't have gone back, which is what I normally don't do because I don't like the company. I don't like its booking. But like, for Rev Pro to do it when they're basing themselves as like a British version of New Japan, you just can't do that kind of thing. And it annoys me when New Japan book equally shoddy angles in their own company, but more often than not, they're nowhere near the main event. So you don't send the fans home pissed off.
They've never got close to this much. Like, a lot of people have said, with the title match it was and the story it was, and I'll get into that and I'll address that in a sec, but with all that, it was always going to have bullshit. Yes, but there's levels to this shit, man. Like,
Kia said to me, like, well, how would you have booked it? And I was like, what? You need something to go wrong there. So either you book it as a no disqualification match so you can do all that shit without the ref bump, or you do a ref bump and then something that leads straight into the finish. I just don't need this elongated, extended nonsense.
Fucking load of shenanigans. Too many to go into, really. And I was having a chat with pretty sure it was Ben Owens afterwards, and he said, imagine how different things would have been if, after that initial ref bump, Andy Quildan rolls into the ring, pulls his jacket off, he's wearing a ref shirt underneath, which is a nice little callback to, Andy Quildan's past. Ospreay, they fight for a little bit longer. Ospreay hits a Stormbreaker, Andy Quildan counts 3. How much better is that? And that gets across the exact same story they want to, but so much more successfully. And I won't say no one would have complained about that because, it's life. There's always going to be someone complaining, but there would have been so many fewer complaints. And I think almost everyone would have walked away happy.
I could have lived with that because it makes everyone look strong. Whereas, like, I know Andy Q's had to set himself up as a bit of a joke, but then he's supposed to be the babyface in this. The whole point was that Starr was supposed to be the heel. So, like, I know he's getting cheered wildly by everybody, but he's supposed to be the heel. So you have him and you have Shay trying to manipulate the situation and cheat. So Andy Quildan comes down, big hero, I'm going to make the big save, and then he just runs away. What the hell is that? Like,
and
by the end, you have Will
Ospreay getting booed after winning the match.
We'll get onto that bit in a bit, but like for me it was 30 minutes of amazing wrestling between two of the best wrestlers on the planet, and it wasn't just amazing, it was these two guys were murdering each other. They were putting their bodies on the line. There's one moment when Starr hits like a uranage onto on Will onto like the ring barricade, like facing upwards, like perpendicularly right into his back, just like kind of bending over that. That would murder you. There's another moment when I think Ospreay is pushed off the top rope through a barricade that's kind of draped across from the apron to the ring, and he bends the metal barricade in half. These two guys absolutely savaged each other. They worked an incredible match for half an hour, and it was all made so inconsequential. That's what really frustrated me. Like, I think we had slightly different reactions to coming out of the match. You were obviously very angry, and I completely get that. But I came away less angry and more just disappointed. Because for me, it was like, wow, RPW, this was like the final kind of straw of me going, damn, RPW is never going to fully get out of their own way. They're never going to be the promotion that they tease being, because they're so close. They're so close a lot of the time, and at times they get there. At times when they're really going for the kind of the pure sport, wrestling above all else, great matches, that sort of presentation. As we said,
the worst thing about it is they clearly don't see themselves the same way. Otherwise, they wouldn't have run that. So that it's just so, everything about this was incredibly frustrating to me, because I like you said, that match was great. I was there. I was loving it. I thought it was phenomenal. Like I said earlier, I had this as my European match of the year. After about 20-something minutes, I was like, it's so good, and they still haven't got to the final stretch. It's like, what are they going to do in the final stretch? It just completely put it over the edge. But it did, completely the wrong way. And everything about this was just incredibly frustrating, to the point where I was literally swearing the promotion off, because I was just like, well, why? I don't see what the point of going to these shows is if they're going to spend, I don't know, say they spend another year building up something else, and then the payoff is some fucking horse shit like this. It's like, what is the point? And as I said, I have great sympathy for the two wrestlers involved, because I thought they did an excellent job with what they were told to do. But, like, I just hated the booking. And I did get the chance to speak to David Starr about it, which... so he said that he felt the ref bump and the shenanigans were necessary. Which I don't know if I agree with that, but like he's saying, it's a big angle, so shenanigans had to happen for that to play out like it did. And he also said that he thought that that everyone in the back liked it, so that it was well received among the boys. Which I don't know. It depends what they're fans of, but like I didn't like it that much.
I think shenanigans were probably necessary with the way they had built the story up. I know that it's not to the, like, I guess what our image of Rev Pro is, of like that pure sports feel. But I mean, they have been running, this David Starr angle for a long time, and it has been, sports entertainment-y. But like, to the extent to which it came to, putting the Benny Hill music to Andy Q running around the ring, like, it does, as Rob said, sort of cancel out the previous match. Like, it does feel like two matches distinct from each other. And I don't know, maybe if it hadn't gone so long, if it hadn't been 15 minutes of shenanigans, if it hadn't been, 30 minutes of a great match is awesome, but when combined, that runtime is 45 minutes of stuff happening, both good and bad, like, it drains you. And I don't know, maybe a more concise match on both ends may have been better. As we said before, if the shenanigans had just been one ref bump leading straight to the finish, that may have been more well received than, as you say, sort of a pile on of bullshit leading to.
I might have rolled my eyes a little
furious.
bit, but I might have rolled my eyes a little bit if they'd done like something that led to the finish, but I'd have been alright with it, I think. Yeah. Whereas, like, it was just the presentation of it. It didn't need to be like that, and I think they really, really fucked up really badly here.
It was what it was 30 minutes of a match of the year contender, and then tacked onto the end of it was Sting versus Triple H from that WrestleMania. And it's like, that's the kind of match you do when you don't have two of the best wrestlers in the world, because that's what you need to do. But instead, they had a match that handicapped them. They had an ending to a match that absolutely handicapped themselves and made the entire efforts. And, you know, not that I think the wrestlers themselves will feel disrespected, but it felt disrespectful to me to watch those guys go out there, have that match, and have it end like that. It felt almost disrespectful for the work that they'd already done. That's just how it kind of came across. And I don't want to present that everyone in the arena hated it. A lot of people did hate it. And that's, especially in our area. But,
I think it kind of shows what wrestling you're into as to whether you hated it or not.
Yeah. But even people that we get along with, and often we have very similar takes on wrestling with, there were people who really didn't mind this. Today, well, after the Raw Quest show, I had a little chat with JP, and he was saying he didn't mind it anywhere near as much as we did. And Rev Joe from those two guys from the Grapple Spotlight, another great podcast to check out if you need more of the British wrestling talk. He really quite enjoyed it. So I today went and listened to his podcast because he's a guy who I respect. I respect his wrestling opinions, and I was really curious to hear his thoughts. And he actually, you know, he put forward in depth, well explained why he enjoyed the match. And I this isn't going to be set up as like me taking down his opinions. It's more like I found it interesting the positives he took away from it, because a lot of them, what he was saying, I was like, well, that's true, but for me, that's a negative. So I've made notes. I'll go through them. One of the big positives that he took away was that he found the main event hilarious and tremendous slapstick comedy. Main event...
That sounds like Rob's personal nightmare.
The main event of RP... Well, I think it's fair to say Summer Sizzler usually RevPro's biggest show of the year.
I said that, and somebody argued that it was high stakes. Peter Hitchcock argued that it was high stakes.
It's at minimum
certainly one of the big
like,
three.
Big three, big four, whatever.
Yeah, it's one of the bigger shows.
The main event of that, two of the best wrestlers in the world. I think there's very few people who would argue that. David Starr, Will Ospreay. I think that's a first time ever match. I may be wrong, but you know, we haven't seen it in quite a long time at minimum. Two certainly amazing matches. And you're having hilarious slapstick in the main event. What the fuck? Like, why is that what you want from your main event? Why are you choosing that? Now,
you're not Beru and Joe at all. What's wrong with you, Joe?
Like that's just kind of my view. He also said, and you know, this is something that I've heard quite a few people say, it was kind of a combination of one, a lot of people went in with the wrong expectations, and two, the story dictated it.
Dare I go in expecting something good?
Right, so for the expectations thing, it was kind of that with the story going in, and with, you know, something that I've seen quoted a lot of times, the match graphic had Andy Quildan in the graphic. What did you expect?
Yeah, I definitely expected Quildan in the match after seeing that.
Step one, there's levels to this shit, man. Like, there's a difference between kind of the scenario outline where, like, you know, he rolls into the ring, pulls off a ref shirt and counts the 3 count something, and what we got with him running around the ring being chased, all that shit. It was for those who haven't seen it, it was literally a McMahon control of the company Attitude Era main event finish. That was the type of bullshit it was. Like, that's no exaggeration. It might have even been worse than some of them, because we had, you know, so many different refs coming in. You had the fucking Shea storyline come back when that was basically finished in the El Fantasmo match, but whatever.
I had several people ask me who it was, just because they hadn't been watching the previous matches and just didn't know what the hell was going on. Who was that guy in the bow tie, as somebody asked me.
he also brought up that, like, you know, that the story dictated it, and that the people who were expecting something different maybe didn't follow the story. Well, that's a reasonable thing, but also, York Hall is a show that's going to be watched by a lot more people than their smaller shows. I think that's fair to expect. To have a match in the main event where you need to have watched the smaller shows, particularly on a weekend like this, where there's a lot of people there to see New Japan, and because New Japan stars are on the Rev Pro show, you're going to have people showing up to the Rev Pro card. To have such a storyline heavy match, you know the beautiful thing about kind of a pure sports build? You don't have to know all the intricacies. You can jump in and love it. You have something like that, some intricate thing, you can do it in a way where it's tremendous for everyone, but maybe adds a little bit more if you haven't watched everything. But no, for that match, if you weren't invested in the storyline, which a lot of people won't have been, then it's a clear negative. And I think that's almost not properly realising where you're at as a company almost, because Rev Pro is a company that a lot of people check in for those big 3-4 shows a year and don't follow intricately. And I think you almost have to, by fighting against that, obviously you want people to watch all the shows, but by fighting so strongly against that, you're almost handicapping yourself. And then also, it's wrong to have the expectations that two of the best wrestlers in the world are going to have a match where they can have a great match and it not be full with bullshit. Maybe with the storyline, that is true that it's the wrong expectations, but you know what? You book this shit. You choose what story to tell. You have chosen to book the two of the best wrestlers in the world against each other, and you've chosen to handicap yourself, and you're telling people that, yes, we've booked two of the best wrestlers in the world, but you shouldn't expect a great match with a great satisfying finish, because we don't want to put that on. How is that a positive? That's... What the fuck's going on here? What are we doing? What are we doing here, man?
I think you might be angrier than me about this.
And the third thing is, even if everything about it, everything we've already covered, you're fine with all of that, you disagree with all of that, fair enough. Even if you think they took the exact right direction to go, it didn't fucking work. Do you know what? Because Will Ospreay, the most over wrestler in that company for the past 4 or 5 years or whatever, he got fucking booed at the end and he was the face! He got booed! It didn't work! You accidentally got your biggest face in the company booed! He was the valiant guy fighting for the company, coming back, the conquering hero, fighting for the face owner. He beat the tyrannical hero, the tyrannical heel, finally getting his comeuppance, and he got booed! It didn't work! You failed! In everything about that show, about this whole storyline, you were completely happy with it. The fucking crowd that you had booed when the face won at the end. You failed with that story, even if that story you're quite happy with what it was. It failed with the crowd. How can you say it was successful? Now,
we need to...
Now, for a little bit of balance, not everyone booed. Not everyone booed, but I bet if you watch on VOD, there's a lot more people booing than cheering. It's when the match ended, when Andy Quildan gives the thumbs down, Will Ospreay does the Stormcutter, pins star 1, 2, 3. There's a far more negative reaction than a positive one, and that means the story you're telling, you have failed. That's I would love to hear, and if you disagree with that, I'm very interested to see your point of view. And I'm very interested to hear, and if you've interpreted that differently, I'm interested to hear it, but I don't see any other way when you've had a 2-year-long storyline, and the storyline ends, and the face gets booed. I don't see how that's viewed as a success.
This is like listening to myself from Friday nights. Just how mad you are about it. Just to put that into context, I was so angry about this finish. I was literally ranting to absolutely anyone that would listen, and people who didn't want to listen were still hearing about
including David Starr.
Including David Starr.
Barricading him into the pod.
I didn't barricade him in. I had a quiet chat. I was far more civil about it with David to his face than I was to the match in general when everyone else was kind of crowding around wondering why I was so angry. But yeah, Rob, you actually are equally as angry about it, which kind of makes me feel better.
That was beautiful. Well done, Rob.
Yeah, I enjoy that.
I completely agree with pretty much everything, especially the final point, that it, no matter how you justify it, it is a creative failure because Will Ospreay got booed at the end. And that, no matter how funny it is, at least it was memorable. I'll give it that. Like, nobody will ever forget that match and forget
That's
being
true.
there.
That's true. And kind of my big takeaway from this whole situation is that RevPro doesn't know what it wants to be. And I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been thinking about RevPro a lot. I've been thinking about this whole scenario, and I've kind of got 3 different scenarios in my head. So apologies, guys, but I may do a little bit of a monologue here. I realise I've just gone on a big rant, but I've got this thesis to lay out.
You came in prepared, Rob. I came in with nothing. I was just going to kick back and listen to your opinions. So let them rip.
Right, so the impression I get is RevPro, and kind of, I guess in this we're talking about Andy Quildan. I think we should say we both like Andy Quildan. He's a great guy. He's a good promoter. He's put on a lot of really shows I've really enjoyed in the past. And this isn't like criticism necessarily as him as a person. And I feel the need to put it out there ahead of this because people are always going to construe this horribly. This is kind of just criticism of the art presented. Now, the impression I get is that there's a conflict in his mind between kind of the pure sports is what I model it as a lot of the time, but I don't necessarily mean that because I mean like New Japan. And New Japan isn't this bastion of clean finishers. They have their bullshit. They have that. But in general, it's you win, you move up. You lose, you move down. Wins and losses matter. While there is interference and stuff, it's predominantly about the wrestling. Like the main event here, you would never have in New Japan to that degree. There are definitely matches with bullshit, especially in the Bullet Club matches. But you never have that Benny Hill like running around the ring bullshit. That's on one side, and you can clearly see the influence, obviously partially because he's booking half the New Japan roster, and that they're the people drawing a lot of people to his shows for the most part. Also in the contenders, it's no great revelation to say they're a bit like the Young Lions. That's quite an obvious parallel there.
Never noticed that before. It's quite the similarity.
You've got people who've come up in that promotion are now integral parts of New Japan and they're still booked. Fucking the champion is Hiroshi Tanahashi. He's a New Japan guy. He's the champion of the company. You've got Will Ospreay. You've got Zack Sabre Jr. You've had, you look at all the RevPro champions for the last, 3 years? I think pretty much every one of them's currently in New Japan. That's like their main place of work. So there's... I'm not revealing anything amazing by saying there's quite a strong influence there. I don't think that's an outrageous statement. But also, there's a very clear, and my guess is kind of like a childhood nostalgia-driven thing.
Can I just quickly interrupt and say the last champion they had who was not a New Japan guy was Marty Scurll, and that was 2015, so it's been 4 years.
And even he
went there eventually. So if you kind of want to go further back than that, it would have been Colt Cabana, which is
who has also wrestled for New Japan recently. So it's Sha Samuels is the only one, literally the only one.
That's how long they've been tied together.
So yeah, I'm not making some great leap to say RevPro has a little bit of influence from New Japan, but also on the other side, kind of a nostalgia-driven, I imagine, from kind of what the people running that company were enjoying growing up, there's a very clear like Attitude Era influence. I don't think that's a big jump. I think this main event is probably the starkest example, but in a lot of the way the finishers work out, a lot of the storylines and the interference heavy stuff we get, especially on the non-York Hall shows, but definitely this main event, as I've alluded to several times already this podcast, this was like a tribute to Shane McMahon and Mr. McMahon interfering in Attitude main events, just with better wrestlers individually, although, they were interfering in some Kurt Angle matches. So in many ways, there's a lot of parallels there. And to me, it feels like those two kind of psyches, those two things that are enjoyed by the people running the company are always in conflict. And the problem is, it's like RevPro doesn't know what it wants to be. There's three different scenarios in my head. There's one, it wants to be that New Japan style thing. Not where everything has a clean finish, but there's overall, it's presented like a sport for the most part. Everyone listening to this knows what New Japan's like for the most part. Like, we know what that kind of idea is. Hell, there was a show the following night after Summer Sizzler that most people who went to Summer Sizzler went. That's kind of on one side of things. And if he wants to be that, then why the fuck is he having main events like this? Because if that's what he thinks New Japan is, then he needs to watch it. So we can almost disregard that. On the other side of the things, there's what if he wants to be pure Attitude Era? Well, if that's the case, then this main event fits in perfectly. But you're drawing your crowd predominantly from people, especially initially. Maybe he's brought some fans in with the New Japan guys, but then they become fans of RevPro. But the majority of people who come to these big RevPro shows are coming either because of the New Japan talent or because of the British talent who they are fans of from New Japan. That's...
I don't think that's a reach at all. I feel that's pretty accurate.
That's again. I don't think I'm making a big jump here. Especially this show of all shows, the night before Royal Quest. You've got Ospreay in the main event. You've got Tanahashi, Suzuki, Okada, and and Sabre in the semi. You've got the Gorillas of Destiny weirdly getting the biggest reaction of the night, which was somewhat surprising, but it shows what type of fandom this was. There's a clear delineation that a lot of these people are coming because they're fans of New Japan, in which case I think you have drastically misread your audience if you think people that are coming to your shows because of New Japan want this Attitude Era bullshit.
I started going because they started booking New Japan talent, and I don't know if I want to just come out and say this, but I don't think I've ever actually been a fan of Rev Pro. More the fact that they booked people who I liked and maybe didn't do a terrible job with it. But if you look at the core of what Rev Pro is and if you look at the stuff before New Japan was involved, it was not a good promotion. There was some sporadically good wrestling built around the talent that was coming through in BritWres at the time, and I think it's luck more than anything that you've got that talent coming through, and it's been combined with the New Japan talent, giving you some really great shows like 2015, 2016, and since then. But yeah, as for RevPro itself, we tried to watch some of their TVs and stuff, and it honestly just shit.
I don't think I'd go quite as far to say it is, I don't know, shit without the New Japan influence, but yeah, I mean, definitely. People come in because of the big ticket names from New Japan. Like, the first show I went to was because Shinsuke Nakamura was slap bang middle on the poster. And I wanted to go see him. I do think there have been some quite good stuff that has been, very definitely Rev Pro without any New Japan influence. But yeah, like, it's maybe not the norm. That is definitely what you're gonna get without.
I feel like
the
if
New
I'm doing
Japan
like a
banner on it.
percentage thing of like the things that I've enjoyed versus the things that I haven't enjoyed, it's the same as like the New Japan Ring of Honor partnership. It's like the stuff that I enjoyed was the New Japan stuff, and the stuff that I didn't enjoy is Ring of Honor. I think 100% of almost all the stuff I haven't enjoyed has been like the Rev Pro stuff. And that's not even a knock on any of the wrestlers that were involved. Like, I didn't think it was a terrible idea to have Curtis Chapman win the Cruiserweight title, but the crowd clearly didn't care. And every time he's tried to build with people who are not involved at all in New Japan or have gotten over elsewhere, like your David Starrs, when Tim Thatcher and Volta were involved, that was very much the case. If they got over somewhere else, they came to Rev Pro, got over there. Same as CCK. If you look at Rev Pro's history for making their own stars, it's not been very good.
I think I could partially agree with that. Obviously, you've got Oku at the moment. I think they've done a big part in elevating him.
I think that's fair, but like you look at the guys that they're using at the moment, and the vast majority of them have gotten over somewhere else.
Yeah,
and then gotten used in Rev Pro.
Yeah, like they were a big part of getting Ospreay over initially. Obviously, Progress was also a big part, but that, you know, I'd split it kind of 50-50.
I feel like it's been a while since anybody got over there, with the exception of OJMO.
I think El Phantasmo they did a solid job with.
Them giving big matches to Ospreay, Sabre Jr. and Skull definitely pushed them upwards. Like, obviously, like, their characters, especially Skull and Ospreay, with the Havoc feud, did obviously get built by Progress, and like that's sort of where their identity was formed. But the actual like matches that we remember from their rises, I think, took place in Rev Pro, which again speaks to the sports build, I guess. But like, they're maybe the best at presenting those big time feeling matches and like having those big time feeling events in the York Hall. But yeah, outside of those scenarios, it can be hit and miss, to say the least.
You know where I feel it went wrong? Was when they stopped being able to use like a wider pool of talent. So then they were very much only able to use the guys that they'd built up themselves, who hadn't gone anywhere else, which is a much smaller pool of talent. Like, remember when we had that Suzuki Gun Mustache Mountain match? Like, that was like, this is Andy Q's Dream Factory and open for business. That's what I wanted to see. It's like, where else are you going to see that apart from like maybe OTT? And then they got put on the naughty list with WWE, and you just kind of lose all the potential dream matches that you can do, where you can throw New Japan against guys who are from the other side of that political wrestling spectrum.
I do think the whole WWE UK thing has definitely given them a knock on the head. Like, some, you know, that's the sort of thing that makes you grow grey hairs, having to deal with all of that shit. Like,
yeah, and I understand this has been an exceptionally hard period of time for Andy Quildan, but like, I feel like he's really struggled to replace the people that he's lost. That if you look at matches like he's trying to get Rob Lias over, and with all due respect to Rob, he seems like he's a way off being at a level where he should be wrestling at York Hall, and yet here he is in a match going over.
I will say that this new alliance with the Southside promoters might provide a lifeline for that sort of thing, because obviously, like, it has been a tough time with the whole WWE UK stuff. Having some backup in that regard, even just on the business side of things, probably will help out Andy sort stuff out.
I've been saying for a while that I felt like he needed a lieutenant. He needed somebody to take some pressure off. And if that is Ben Old, then so be it. My own personal feelings about Southside and the Olds aside, I think that it's a good business move. coming on the back of a show that I really didn't like, it's probably not going to ingratiate him to me, if that makes sense. The South Side have been not exactly my favourite promotion.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Rev Pro starts throwing together import six-mans scrambles, then we'll know the Southside influence is kicking in. But I think, like, in terms of like organizational stuff, it's going to help.
Yeah, it's just so they can run more shows. They can run more shows. They can run in established venues. It's going to make it easier for them to make money, which in this environment is a massive positive, because I get the feeling money is not flowing freely into the coffers at Quilden Towers.
Or in BritWres Towers in general.
BritWres, the fact that everything seems to be collapsing. And I asked a question on Twitter this week about why does nobody run in Birmingham? And promptly had a couple of conversations with people about why that's not the case. And it was very much you just can't afford to rent the venues. Which got me thinking about people who rent venues. Well, no, because you'd have to be off your rocker to start a promotion in this climate. You'd have to be completely insane. The Breed guys, we're going to get to this later, but the Breed guys are finding out just how difficult it is to start up a promotion in this day and age. And we'll get to that later, because we still have stuff to discuss with Rev Pro, but like, I really wanted Rev Pro to establish Birmingham as like a second base. Because they run London, that's the biggest city in the country. Second biggest, Birmingham. Run there, establish that as a second base. Instead of trying to run Southampton, where, with all due respect to Southampton, nobody seems to give a shit down there. Everyone on the South Coast goes to Riptide, and they're just not drawing well enough there. So I think it's an opportunity to take like a second base, and they've gone with where Southside run, which is a lot closer to them. And understanding the do's and don'ts of promotion a little better after this week, I can completely understand why they're not trying to run in Birmingham, but that doesn't make it any less disappointing.
My thing with Rev Pro is always that it gets so close sometimes. Like,
yeah.
It is a promotion for the most part where it does feel like wins and losses matter. It does, as we've always said, it does ape the New Japan feel at times, and then it just doesn't quite commit to it, and it ends up like a jumbled, incoherent mess. And that's kind of to finish off my thesis that I was going off on earlier. The third scenario, and the one I feel is kind of most likely and kind of where we're at, is that the people running Rev Pro want it to be both New Japan and Attitude Era at the same time. And honestly, I think that's just creatively incoherent, because I think they are two things that they clash too much, and you lose the benefits of both sides in doing that. And unfortunately, I feel like that's almost where we're at, and that's what feels so frustrating to me, because at times it does feel like it's getting there. It does feel like it's presenting something, because there's a very clear market for a New Japan-like promotion in the UK, as you can see by New Japan drawing, what was it? Over 6,000.
It was 6,119, which I have a suspicion it was more than that, and they're just not including comps.
They usually don't.
I think it's probably around 7.
Yeah, I would imagine so. There was, it was packed, and there's a clear energy for that sort of product. And you get so close to it, and it's so frustrating to see them not commit to it and end up in this sort of thing. Because yes, while the storyline, while maybe we had our expectations slightly wrong, maybe we should have expected bullshit like this, it's frustrating that that's the case, because of the main event of the biggest / one of the biggest shows for one of the biggest UK promotions of the year to be slapstick comedy when you have two of the best wrestlers in the world. You're handicapping yourself, and for me, that's just incredibly disappointing.
And I don't see why I have to accept that. I've been told to pipe down more than once. But it's like, what's the problem? And it's like, well, the problem is it sucks. So why do I have to take it? I don't. That's the whole point of criticism.
It's one of those things where, like, if that's what the people running the promotion want it to be, then that's what it's going to be. But at the same time, I feel it's a massive missed opportunity, and I don't think it's some insane wish to think that it would be great if the promotion that draws based off New Japan talent and is linked to the promotional partner of New Japan in the UK could book with a similar spirit to New Japan. I don't think that's some crazy wish that's completely out there. And maybe he doesn't want it to be that, but ultimately I think that's him misreading at least a large segment of his audience.
I think it doesn't help that different people seem to go to different shows, so like it depends who he books on the card. Yeah, so you book anyone from AEW.
He's playing the cockpit crowd, which are like, you know, the hardcore insiders, the York Hall crowd.
But that's like 100 people.
You're more, yeah, well, yeah, but they, you know, they're the hardcores. Then you got the York Hall crowd, which is maybe more like, I guess, an AEW kind of crowd, and then, you know, as we say, on the South Coast where they just don't give a shit. It's difficult to juggle all of that. And it's also, I guess, difficult to kind of kill your babies. Like, obviously, it is Andy Q's vision. It's his dream factory. But, like, as you say, Rob, like, sometimes you need to lean into something harder than you may probably wish on, like, an egotistical level to make it better. And so, like, if you grow up watching these angles and you want to repeat them. And, you know, as I said, it has been a very, it's been the buzz of Twitter. It certainly was that weekend. And you could argue that any publicity is good publicity. But, like, leaning more into the sports presentation at this time when New Japan is running the Copper Box and absolutely packing the place. And there is a real hunger for that sports presentation. Sometimes you may have to leave that idea on the table, as enticing as it is to recreate the Attitude Era.
I really don't think they've had a good year. I don't think RevPro have had a good year at all. If you look back at what they've been doing and what they're... If you go for match quality, which is something that me and Rob talk about quite a lot, if you look at the match quality that they've delivered this year, it's been noticeably down on pretty much every year that I've been going. You just haven't got those high-end matches, and you haven't got the consistency of good matches on the cards. And that in itself is contrary to what they're going for if they're going for that New Japan market. So has there been like a change in booking this year? I don't know.
And here's the thing, and you know, I promise we will move on to the rest of the card soon. But we've talked about, well, you know, we'll breeze through it compared to this match. But we've talked about how the crowd reaction at the end didn't work, and I'm not going to say, because it would be a lie to say that the crowd was dead through all of the bullshit, but I think it was fairly noticeable that the crowd was a lot more consistently hot through the first non-bullshit section of the match compared to the bullshit section. Like, people were reacting to the actual, like, events in the bullshit section, but other than that, it was kind of dead. And maybe part of that was the length of the match, the length of the show, and it was very hot, etc., etc., etc.
It was hot and it was late.
The crowd seemed pretty damn hot for the first, you know, before the bullshit started. That's, yeah. But also, taking a more general look at things, the way they're booking at the moment isn't fucking working, because when the New Japan guys aren't there, RevPro doesn't draw. So whether you want to do your Attitude Era stuff and you think that's cool and you're enjoying it, in terms of drawing, it's not working, because the only time, you know, we talk about the Southampton stuff and that sort of thing, that shit ain't drawing. Those shows aren't drawing well. The only time RevPro draws well is when they've got the New Japan guys. For me, that says something. That says people are invested in the New Japan style of presentation, and they're not invested in what RevPro is currently presenting. That's my take. Now, Do we have anything else we want to say before we move on to the rest of the show?
I think we said plenty about that.
Cool. I think we've nicely. Let's see the time. You know, it's only taken us 50 minutes to do one match.
I have no strong opinions on any other match on this show.
I've got a few takes. So we'll rush through it. So initially there was a pre-show 6-man that neither of us saw because we're still in the Dundee Arms, so we can skip off that. The LA Dojo Boys
Carlos.
won that. Yeah, the LA Dojo Boys won that one, so well done to them. Congratulations. Then there was like a contract signing between Suzuki and Okada. That was a kind of cool touch. Then we had Gabe Kidd versus defeat Sean Jackson. This was a fine match. It was a very Young Lions match. It was fine. There was nothing special, nothing memorable really.
Oh, Gabriel's gone off to LA Dojo now.
Yeah. He's a guy who I really think a couple of years down the line he could be. You know, he could be something. He could definitely be something in New Japan.
Yeah.
He's also noticeably already really toned up. He was always like a bit of a hoss, and you know, always muscular, never fat or anything.
Yeah, no, he was always kind of chunky, but he wasn't really like. He's a lot more toned now.
Yeah, he's got definition in his abs and stuff.
He's only 22.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people are saying, "Oh, he's been around for a while." He has, but he's still only 22. When he started in like WCPW, he was 18.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
He's definitely one to keep an eye on because I think if barring injury and stuff like that, I think he's a guy who's going to go far, and a guy I definitely look forward to keeping a track of over the next few years. Then we had the Rob Elias beating TK Cooper match that you talked about. That, as you said, really didn't feel like a match that belonged on this caliber of show, especially with how long the show went. This was an easy cut, especially with the finish, right? It was a count out, right? Like, yeah, it was an odd one. And also, I don't know, man. It's something we harp on a lot, but I hate crowd brawls. It's like when you're not at a show with like 50 people there, you're deliberately cutting off a large chunk of your audience from watching what you're doing. That's always something that just annoys me.
It's also a very anti-short person.
maybe that's why I'm so annoyed by it. Then we had CCK versus Maloney and MK McKinnon that ended very badly.
How about those two bad finishes in a row as well? That we should have been kind of sensing the omens.
Yeah, so what happened in this match, it was going along fine, wasn't like amazing, wasn't terrible. Then they kind of did, Maloney and MK were doing a kind of whisper in the wind, no, not whisper in the wind, what's the, poetry in motion type deal, where Maloney's are like on hands and knees, like in a crawling position. Gresham's in the corner, MK's doing to run and like jump off. He does it the first time, he slips off. So he immediately goes back and does it again, which, ignoring everything else that happened following that, is always like, ugh, what an annoying, dumb thing to do. Just don't, like that. It's such low creativity to just go back to the exact same spot after you screwed it up, but whatever. He does it again, slips again, and looks like he lands on Gresham's leg and injures Gresham, and the match immediately is called off. Yeah, as you said, bad omen for things to come. Then we had a 6-way scramble, which had Hikuleo, and it was kind of a mystery deal, so it was each person that came out was like, oh, cool. Hikuleo, Mike Bailey, Robbie Eagles, Rocky Romero, Senza Volto, who actually had a really strong showing and very much got over. I hope he's booked more going forwards, because he looked really good here. And then the eventual winner, Sanada, who did fuck all in the match, but was very over for the brief time they were in. So, that's Sanada for you. That was actually that might have actually been the best match of the night, all things considered. Like, weirdly, you could almost argue for the main event, because the first half hour was so good, but I don't know. Like, that's a hard one to evaluate as a whole. Then you had Aussie Open versus Bodum and Shah. This was going pretty damn well and then ended prematurely because it had a 3 count that was almost surely meant to be a 2 count on Bodum. Yeah, another bad omen for things to come. At this point in the show, it was like, wow, this is a bad show that isn't entirely their fault. And then at the end, it was kind of, wow, that was a bad show, and they kind of made it their fault. They did their kind of slingshot into a cutter thing that's always a signature, never really a finisher. Ref counted 3. Carl Fletcher was arguing with the ref, saying, no, that was a 2 for a few seconds before you could kind of see in his face, like, shit, I can't be the one saying this. This was awkward as fuck. Shah kind of jokingly slammed the ref. The ref rolled out the ring. Bowden was furious, looked like he was shooting, like, laying in some real fucking stiff stomps on the ref until he was pulled off by some of the LA Dojo guys. Yeah, that looked a little ugly. This was a real shame, especially as this, I'm guessing, since it was kind of, this was a match where the winner got to go on to the Royal Quest show the next night. I'm guessing New Japan people were probably watching this, so I'm guessing all 4 guys weren't particularly pleased that their match ended up like this. It was an ugly situation, but I did think they managed to do a very good job of saving it after kind of the initial moment of awkwardness, where Shah got on the mic, said like, oh, this is a fucking conspiracy against us, kind of playing into the that there was a clear fuck up, but he's kind of making it part of the storyline. It kind of gives a little more spice to that feud between Aussie Open and Bowden and Shah going forwards. Then Aussie Open kind of cleared house on Bowden and Shah. Aussie Open cut a very long promo that was very clearly, shit, GOD weren't ready to come out yet because the match was not supposed to have finished at that moment. So we'll cut a long promo while they get ready. GOD come out, and fuck were they over. They were shockingly over, weren't they, Art?
Ridiculously so, yeah. I've not seen it myself, but they've never been in the country before. So it might just be everyone's really excited to see this tag team that... But I don't get it, to be honest with you, because...
there ain't nobody bigger than Gorilla.
Pretty sure it's realer, but whatever.
I'm just not interested in any of that bullshit. Like the I don't like Tama. I don't like any of the Bullet Club, basically. So yeah, I didn't really understand why they're over. But
I'm a little bit higher on them than you, but I was like shockingly surprised by just how over they were in the building. There was like a good like 4 or 5 minute like chant going back and forth between Aussie Open and them, and it was the hottest the building was all night. It was an amazing atmosphere,
which is weird because that's the one time I wasn't yelling stuff, because I was just like, well, everyone else seems to be enjoying themselves, I'll let them get on with
it. And that's the thing about this show. This was a bad show, but it was the best crowd Rev Pro have had in years, like maybe since the show that had Ospreay versus Skrull versus Styles and what was the other match? O'Reilly versus Kushida. That was the last time I remember a crowd that hot for a York Hall show, and that's going back a long way. And it was packed too. It was all set up. Like the things that weren't the show were excellent about this show. Other than the heat. The heat was a bit hot. So that's kind of the post-match stare down done. Then ELP beat Oko. This was a match that kind of struggled pacing-wise early, but ended up very good. And by the end of it, I was like, fuck, Oku is... Because, I'm a fan of Oku, but I wasn't quite sure how over he'd be in York Hall, because prior to this, his ascent has been on the cockpit shows for the most part. He is a made man in that promotion. It was great seeing...
If you've seen him wrestle once... You're on board.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I feel. Like, because I hadn't even seen him wrestle. I'd seen him wrestle for Progress in a tag before a show, and he was so outstanding in that match. I was like, this guy's got it.
Yeah, and then, I hadn't seen him properly, like in his current incarnation, before I went the first show I came back to after my hiatus, and yeah, like I wasn't that into the show previous to his match with Pac, but. Yeah, he definitely won me over. So, I mean, he's been an absolute revelation and very, very fun to watch.
Yeah, and again, though, I think they've looked onto that because he's gotten over by just touring the country and being outstanding everywhere. And then the big promotions are like, oh, maybe we should give him a go. And he's gained all that experience over the last like year and a half. And he's just kind of channeled that into a character. And like the character has grown. I think he's just put little bits and pieces onto it. And his work's gotten so much better. And it's just everything has come together like a perfect storm for him. And yeah, he is small, but you don't have to be big to get over. And you look at some of the biggest stars in wrestling over the last 10 years, and you just look at guys like at Punk or Daniel Bryan or Pete Dunne. You don't need to be big to get over. And he's got everything else.
And he's got the kind of body where it looks like his frame can fill out. It's kind of just give it time and, consistent working out. And, even that won't be the weakness. Because at the moment, that is like the restricting factor for me. It's that he does, he is a little thin. The believability is like a slight stretch, but he's not a million miles away, and he's getting there slowly. So and he's young too.
Makes him a better underdog as well, because you really want to root for him.
That's fair, but it kind of limits he almost has to be an underdog at the moment. Where you can think 3 or 4 years down the line, maybe he's put on some muscle mass, and all of a sudden he's gone from a great underdog to a great everything.
I feel like the cocky heel champion version of OJMO that we're going to get in about 5 years' time is going to be absolutely fucking sensational.
Oh, definitely. He's got this crowd connection already, and that's in many ways the hardest part, and he's got it no trouble at all.
There is one concern that he did have a neck problem this weekend, and he needs to take care of himself.
I mean, he does work like every show everywhere, so unfortunately,
that wear and tear happens, so you got to take care of himself.
Mm-hmm. Then we had the semi-main event of Suzuki Gun, Sabre and Suzuki going up against Tanahashi and Okada. Sabre pinned Tanahashi, and at that point, everyone was like, "Okay, Tanahashi's winning tomorrow."
Well, yeah, I said that, and I was like, "But you can't. You're surely not going to put the belt on Tanahashi." But then, yeah,
I think obviously Tanahashi did win. I think he's probably beating Zack again in the rematch, and then eventually losing to Ospreay after Ospreay beat him last night at the G1. That's kind of the way I see things. That's kind of the way I see things going. As a match, this was like very forgettable, but it was kind of like it's really cool to see Okada and Tanahashi team up live. Like, that was a cool moment, but like as a match, it was Tanahashi taking a night off.
He does that. To be fair to him, he didn't take as much of a night off as Naito took at Royal Quest.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And
not
then
the night off.
Hey, there we go. Hey. And then we've very much covered the main event. I don't think we need to add anything more to that. We've done Southside and RPW. Do you guys want to add anything to that? Are you cool?
No, I kind of thought they might go after IPW UK, because that has basically collapsed in on itself again. So I thought they might go after that as
a weird world where Southside has more brand value than IPW.
Yeah, but it's true though.
But this is where we're at by this point.
Southside, the difference is Southside actually has like a fan base.
Yeah. Whereas they actually ran shows that people went to.
Yeah, IPW did a stupid vanity show in New York, and then the guy gave the company away because it was losing so much money. That's what the problem was there. Going back like a year or maybe two, that probably would have been the better option for Rev Pro, to just kind of regain that part of their identity, and it would have been pretty sweet for Andy Q to just turn around and go, yeah, I'm going to buy this piece of shit promotion out and just use it. Then he could cackle to himself. But he wouldn't have got himself a lieutenant, which is what I feel he needs. So that's what he's got from the deal. That's what he's got from Ben Old. And hopefully they will be reputable promoters.
Ready to move on to Raw Quest and FakeOver?
I am.
Absolutely.
Royal Quest, I have one match that I have a really, really strong take on.
I can join you in on that one.
Obviously, the undercard, bit of a mixed bag. Some of the wrestlers put some effort in. Like, you know, your Ospreays, your Eagles who wanted to put on a show in front of the crowd. And then you had some other guys, Tetsuya Naito, who just didn't give a shit. And yeah, it really was just a complete night off for him. I thought Kota Ibushi took it pretty easy as well, although I can kind of understand that. He had a pretty rough summer. But yeah, Naito, jeez. Like, he turned up and hit Destino, and the crowd were like, "Yay!" And that was it.
Did he even hit Destino?
He did. It wasn't even in the match. It was afterwards. But that match was
I remember.
13 minutes long. And it really felt
I must have been on my phone. Well, at some point, I sat next to Matt Yano, and we just made jokes throughout.
Probably that match. But yeah, the match that I had the strongest take on was the Kenta Ishii match. So if we can get to that first.
Oh boy.
So I'm sat on Cage Match right now, and it's come up as a recommended match.
What?
Yeah, it's a recommended match on Cage Match. It has a
I've never seen a match
rating.
so bad that people treated so good. Like,
I saw people after the show who were saying, "Oh, I thought it was all right." What?
I mean, it looked like Kenta was like about to die at any moment. I was horrified, but the crowd just willed it into being something.
It started fine. They went about 10 minutes, and then Kenta got dropped on his head and knocked loopy, and he couldn't do anything. He literally couldn't do anything. So, like, he tried to do like a scoop slam at one point, that snap power slam thing that he did, and he just kind of ran into Ishii's midsection, and his arms didn't work. And it's like this. I mean, I'm laughing. We're all laughing about it, but it's like, this guy had a serious head injury here. Why on earth did they let this go into the 10 minutes against Ishii?
Yeah, not the guy who's going to, like, cushion you through the end of a match, really.
I mean, he did. Like, Ishii, once he realised how fucked Kenta was, he really did just walk him through it, baby steps, making sure he was okay. He did a great job of taking care of him, like Nick Gage did to David Arquette when he lost it. It's very much a case of that Ishii realised the situation, realised what he needed to do, and he was a model professional through the second half of this match. But it was a terrible fucking match. It had a god-awful run-in with...
Yeah, just straight in front of a referee.
Oh, just right... I don't know how much of that was just because the plan of the match went completely out the window, but it's been a long time since I saw a match go that completely off the rails in front of my very eyes, and 6,000 people have just sat there with me going, "Oh no."
I don't think it was 6,000. I think a lot of people, I don't know, were just making noise and loving it. I don't know.
I'm glad
it was
some people were into it, and I'm
Yeah.
surprised that some people who I think are quite wrestling intelligent coming up to me after the show saying they thought it was pretty good, and I was like, what? And that Cage Match recommendation for me is just shocking.
Just at the end, seeing Kenta not even be able to like get onto the top rope, it was just sad to see. He is literally just a name on the back of the shirt at this point. Like,
well, I think that's pretty harsh when, this match was not the normal Kenta performance. He very clearly got, if not
yeah, but I feel like
dinged.
this has happened before as well in the like after 10 minutes, like he turns into not even like a botch machine, just sort of baby legs wrestler. I don't know. Obviously, this was extreme circumstances, I feel like we've seen this before.
During G1, I don't think he wrestled particularly well, but he had good matches because he knew his limitations and he stuck to them. Occasionally a match went off the rails, but nowhere near as bad as this.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think he got concussed in any of the other matches.
No,
I'm pretty sure
he
he did.
He was concussed because,
obviously, this was like an accident and like a freak occurrence, but also, I don't know, it felt very similar to what we've been seeing from him before.
I don't know. I'm not going to mark him down for getting concussed. Like these things happen, unfortunately.
I'm just stunned that some people thought it was a good match and didn't see that there was a very clear and obvious problem there. That you would have to have been either not really paying attention at all or quite intoxicated to miss like how badly that went.
It speaks for how up for it everybody was. Like, everybody was so excited for this show. There was definitely a buzz that there hasn't been for a lot of the year. I was very up for it.
I was very up for that match. I was very excited. As soon as they released the card, I was like, that's the match. That's the one. That's going to be the Don.
And man, Kenta was so over as a heel. It was awesome.
Yeah. And then... I was worried he'd get cheered, but no.
No, that was like...
Wall of heat.
He got cheered in my section. I was in the Bullet Club end, I think.
Oh no.
For you. Yeah, so I was kind of like behind the entrance like board thing. Like upper level obviously, so I could see the ring. But so you could kind of see the wrestlers once they'd made their way through like the entranceway, and then go back down some steps on the other side of it. Kenta like collapsed almost down those steps on that side. That's how bad it was. Like someone had to kind of like almost catch him at the bottom of them. The man did not look well, and he was in the hospital by the end of the day. So yeah, poor guy. And you know what? All things considered, I thought after like a middle portion that was absolutely, absolute shit because the guy was concussed and it was a complete mess. I thought they almost managed to pull it back very, very slightly for the end. But, this wasn't a good match, but there was a huge asterisk.
Yeah. It was a great atmosphere.
Oh, incredible.
The atmosphere was fantastic for it, but yeah, it was not a good match at all.
So we'll go with GOD versus Aussie Open as the next match to cover. This was another match that had a very good atmosphere. And the guys weren't quite as over as they were in York Hall, but both teams were pretty over. There were dueling chants throughout.
You got that duel chants before it started.
Yeah, it was
that kicked off pretty loud.
And it was a pretty good match. But the weird thing for me here was the best thing about Aussie Open are the Mark Davis hot tags, and we didn't really get one. Like
he did one where he kind of came in and charged across the ring, and Tama tried to clothesline him halfway across, and he just ran straight through.
And then he kind of got cut off, and it was like, you never quite got the full Aussie Open hot tag, which is like the best thing about Aussie Open.
Yeah, I think he's been toning that back a little bit because I feel like there was a level of criticism that they were basically just doing the same match every night out, which I kind of understand.
Yeah.
And they wanted to feature Kyle more, and yeah. But still, it was a very good match. And like for Guerrillas of Destiny, I think it's as good a match as I've seen from them since the that tag league where the final was ridiculously good. Was it
GBH?
Yes, yeah, it was Maccabi and
Honma.
Yeah.
Back when Honma was good. Memories.
Yeah. Because I don't like their matches. I just feel like they're very sticky. So, yeah, I really enjoyed that. That was good. That's probably like my fourth favourite match of the night, which...
I think I'd have it as third, actually.
I loved that Eagles and Ospreay against ELP and Ishimori wasn't just an absolute like balls to the wall 10 minutes of sprint. I felt like the difference there is like the two matches before it were very like meh, and they came out and just went straight for the gas pedal, and it was such a difference in like approach that I just loved that match.
Mm-hmm. Tanahashi beating Zack Sabre Jr. to become the champion of the British.
Good lad.
I don't like their chemistry. I never like any of their matches. I don't find Tanahashi a particularly compelling grappler. And I think Zack works best when he's in there with someone who is very compelling at grappling to grapple with him, or when he's in there with some like bruiser,
Ishii.
like Ishii or someone who's going to beat him up, and that he's going to have to like survive, grab onto, and just like grind them out slowly just by hanging around in a match. Tanahashi is neither of those two. He's kind of so much of his matches depend on like the grace of him, and that's not really what you get with Zack Sabre matches. I've never really loved their stuff.
They tend to work best when Tanahashi has something that is a clear injury going into the match, and then you have Zack sort of torturing him, and it's more about Tanahashi's will to overcome his own body and the aging process, because he just doesn't want to take another loss to this British punk. That's when they're telling that story. I'm very much invested in it. But I don't feel like he came in with any established injury here, and that kind of hurt the style of the match.
So basically, both guys need to be getting beaten up, and obviously, if they're facing each other, that's one person has to be doing the beating up.
That's true.
I still enjoyed it. This was good.
The crowd like really fucking wanted to love this, and like for the early portions they did. But I did think that like, for portions of this match, this was the only time for the whole show where the crowd kind of got distracted and were chanting like random shit and stuff. Like they wanted to love this match so much, but you could sense sections of them being kind of bored. I did think it came together quite well for the finish, but this wasn't any sort of great match. And when you have two great wrestlers, these two just always seem to slightly underdeliver.
I don't think it's the best match they've had or close to it. I trying to remember what the match was, but like Tanahashi came in and he was badly injured. I can't remember when it was.
I think it was their first G1 match.
New Japan Cup? Might be New Japan Cup. Not important anyway. It's that I feel like they've had a couple of matches that were at a really high standard, and this wasn't at that standard. It was like a little notch below, where a couple of their other matches have also fallen.
I never really enjoyed their matches, but whatever.
Yeah, well, from my point of view, that's
yeah.
That's where I'm coming from.
Okada Suzuki though.
Oh yes.
Fucking hell, what a match! Like I have historically not been anywhere near as into the Suzuki Okada matches as a lot of people, especially over the last few years. I've found Suzuki is slowly like I'm getting my hit rate with him's dropping lower and lower and lower. So coming into this match, I wasn't like super hyped or anything. Fucking hell, they delivered.
Though, Minoru Suzuki saves all his best work for the UK.
He does, and he's a god here. He's a god here. It's fucking...
I just don't understand why he's so into coming to the UK. I think it's just like the first time he came, we all sang along to his music, and now he's like, I love this place. All my best matches are going to happen there now. Because he absolutely killed this match. He was fantastic. Like, he drew the crowd into everything. Like, the crowd was so hot because it's like they recognise his signature stuff, and he just wants to draw them in and then shush them quiet so he can smack Okada with the elbow, and then it's like, oh, yeah, back again. This was so good.
This was his big match of the year. Like, it isn't going to get any bigger for him, so he saved all his best stuff.
Match,
yeah.
But yeah, he's got a great big crowd, appreciative crowd to perform in front of. I think he had a whale of a time out there. I think he had a great time in his little English trip.
Yeah, this match definitely lifted up the whole show for me. Like, I enjoyed the atmosphere, I enjoyed being there, but like, I don't know, like, if this match hadn't been as good as it was, it would have been a pretty middling show overall, I thought. But yeah, this one really, really delivered. It had all the trimmings of the IWGP title match. And obviously I got very annoyed with everybody cheering for Brock Lesnar. Like, fucking hell. Well, I know who that is. Like,
I was standing next to Mort, who was booing him, so I didn't actually hear anything else. He's got a very loud boo.
I want it, especially after the whole Jericho thing denied us the presentation. There hasn't been an IWGP Championship match with the full trimmings for ages, so it was fun to see it in person in the UK and have a little bit of British wrestling history. And yeah, the match was fucking good, as we've already said. But it made a lot of sense to go as long as it did, because their previous 2 matches to this were both half-an-hour draws. So this one needed to go over half an hour to clear that and find a definitive winner, which I think was always going to be Okada, but some of the Gotch pile driver teasers did get me at the end, thinking that maybe he's going to get it.
Like, going into this match, I would have never thought they'd have got me to buy in to Suzuki having a chance, but there were like, the way they structured this match was so good that there were moments where I was like, fucking hell, we could do this, you know? They could give him a gold watch IWGP Championship rate, because he's never won it, and he's getting towards the point where if he's going to win it, he's going to have to win it now. And it was like, fucking hell, they might do this, you know? They
I was just thinking,
but there's a chance.
How many shows are there before the Dome? There's plenty of time.
Yeah.
I was starting to justify it to myself and thinking, no, they could have him win here.
And that's how masterfully they structured this match. And it was so cool because some of their previous matches, it had been like, oh, Suzuki kind of hyper focuses on a limb, and that's kind of his tactic. And a lot of the time for me, it was kind of like it dragged out. Their matches kind of dragged, and they didn't have like the energy to them. This one, it was like, fuck you, I'm Minoru Suzuki. This might be my last ever like huge main event IWGP Championship match. Fuck it, I'm Suzuki, I'm a shoot fighter, I'm gonna not like hyper focus on a limb, I'm gonna beat the crap out of you, then I'm gonna drop you on your head, and I'm gonna pin you. And fuck it, he got damn close to it. He brutalised Okada in a way that you haven't really seen in some of their previous matches recently. And it was just glorious. God damn, like, this was my favourite IWGP Championship match this year. And that covers some ground.
Out of the 2 ones I've seen live, this was my favourite one.
When we're talking about like the UK match of the year, I don't know if we'll be included in this, but like this is basically the best match that's happened in this country this year, I think.
Yeah, and with the importance of it as well, that puts it over the top. And also Suzuki hit a Sakura Toshi, which I was very excited about. I
saw that. I saw it happen, and I was like, I bet Ollie loved that.
Yeah. In terms of like overall show thoughts, I think the biggest positive to me was that it felt so much like a real New Japan show. And I was, you know, we had that Strong Style Evolved UK thing that was just a Rev Pro show called a New Japan show. This felt like a New Japan show because it was a New Japan show, but there was a little bit of me that was slightly worried that it would feel like a scaled up version of the Strong Style Evolved UK.
The ring sort of not looking proper kind of annoyed me, but they played all like the videos and they were proper, and had the English subtitles as well. So yeah, it felt authentic.
The crowd was awesome. All we wanted, the arena rolled.
I think they learned from that because they went and did that American show earlier in the year in Dallas that started the G1, and that just felt right, like all the way through. This felt in the same way that the G1 Dallas show did. Yeah, I could think you consider this a success. Obviously,
100%.
Obviously, big crowd, very receptive crowd, and even though they struggled a little bit throughout the card, I think some of that wasn't their fault, and then the main event was absolutely sensational, so I think we'll call that a win.
It very much felt like one of those destruction shows where the undercard, there's not a whole lot going on, and then the main event rules, and it's kind of like, well, that was kind of a 1, maybe 2 match show, but at the end of the show, I'm feeling very satisfied.
That's the authentic New Japan experience.
Very much so. And I really hope this becomes like a yearly tradition or something, especially with that venue, because I think they've found the perfect wrestling venue in the UK. Because I don't know about your guys' seats, but I was like right at the back. I had a tremendous view. It felt like every seat in the house had a great view.
I was like row 2 on the back, so like as it was raised up above the floor, and I was looking at the floor seats and thinking, I'm really glad I'm not on one of those. Because that was a big space, and there was a lot of rows.
Yeah, maybe that would be the one area that wasn't ideal, but for the most part, I thought it was a tremendous arena for wrestling.
Tiered seating is always a winner for me.
Yeah.
I would rather be in the nosebleeds than like row 7.
And like acoustically, it was great as well. This would be the destination for big time UK wrestling if I had my choice. I love this place.
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's very organised. The facilities were great. I have no real complaints about the copper box. I think that the one major problem is they weren't particularly keen on letting people stand at the back. So I was stood up and I got told to sit down. I'm like, my knee hurts, I can't. And they were all right with that. So
get a doctor's note.
Little tip for everyone: just a whole row of people with sore knees. Yeah, but it was good. It was packed. It was a great atmosphere, and it felt authentic. So a lot of positives. Then at the exact same time, FakeOver NXT UK FakeOver Cardiff was occurring, and
I haven't seen this, so Ollie hasn't seen it either.
So I'm just gonna quickly
NXT UK.
You could probably just record it by yourself later.
I'll just quickly run through things. Noam Dar beat Travis Banks in a nothing match. Cesaro beat Dragunov. This was a match where I was like, fucking hell, I miss seeing Cesaro get to go out there and just wrestle, because he's fucking good and it's easy to forget. I hated Dragunov in this match. Like, all our fears about, like, Dragunov in NXT UK is going to be, like, all his facial expressions turned up to 10. No, they're turned up to, like, 20. I hated him in this match. I found him so annoying. And it wasn't necessarily the work. The work was all clean and stuff. It was hard hitting, but like, god damn, like I couldn't get it. This was the sort of thing where, like, if someone who's not a wrestling fan walks in and sees Dragunov pulling those faces and those weird like poses where he's like doing kind of the Rocky bring it on like pose, it's like, nah, I wasn't about that.
He was a hyped up real person in WXW, and now he's a cartoon character.
Yeah, like, in WXW it was touching on, like, too far for me, and then it's, like, times everything that by, like, 5 in WWE UK. Yeah, I couldn't get past that. The three-way tag match was actually really good between Flash Morgan Webster, Mark Andrews winning the titles off the Grizzled Young Veterans, with Gallus also there. That was Mark, Kofi, and Wolfgang. Those two were actually really good together as a team, Kofi and Wolfgang. Although the match did go a bit too long. It was like 20 minutes, but it was like a three-way scramble tag, and those don't need to go 20 minutes. It was weird. And that was kind of like a problem for a lot of the show. It was weirdly timed out. You then had Joe Kofi beating Dave Mastiff in a last man standing match. I don't really like last man standing matches much, and this was no different. Kaylee Ray beat Toni Storm for the women's title, and it was like 9 minutes, and it was like, why is that match 9 minutes and like a nothing match? Because it was so short, when you've got a 20-minute like three-way tag. And I
think Tony's hurt. She's got a shoulder injury.
That might be an answer. That might make some sense, because the match was really a nothing match.
But I heard this would be a classic we'd be watching in 20 years' time.
Well, it's...
That was William Regal said that, didn't he? He looks for different stuff.
William Regal has bad taste in wrestling. Let's put it out there. I know everyone respects him so much, but he has bad fucking taste in wrestling. I'm not afraid to say it. Then Volta beat Tyler Bate in 45 fucking minutes. Now, I hate long matches more than the average man, but fucking hell, this was like hard hitting. It was well worked, but damn, I didn't care by the end. It was like, look, I'm not saying this was a bad match by any stretch. It was a very good match, but I can't call it great because I was not engaged throughout. Because when you have a match that long, and in general I would say just don't have a match that long, because 45 minutes is nowhere near the optimal match for a singles wrestling match. But if you're gonna go that long, you need like a narrative through line to keep you engaged. And this was kind of just two guys trading bombs for the full 45 minutes. And like, I guess the story was it's Tyler Bate against the odds, being so much smaller, managing to hang with him, trading bombs for 45 minutes. But I don't know, there just wasn't enough there to keep me fully engaged. Like, it was well worked, there was plenty of impressive feats of strength, and I know a lot of people will probably go, oh, well, you just gushed over that Okada-Suzuki match. For a start off, it was 15 minutes shorter, it was 2/3 of the length, and also, the Okada-Suzuki match had a far clearer narrative through line of, these two are going to absolutely batter each other, Suzuki's going like a bull, just going at him, murdering him, trying to get him beat up enough that he could hit the what's this fucking power driver called?
Gotch style, there
we go. Don't know why that escaped me for a second there. And he's gonna hit, when he hits him with that, the match is over. And that was the story of the entire match. This match, it was like, these two are gonna trade moves for 45 minutes. And there were some very cool moves and very impressive moves and cool counters and stuff, but I don't know, it just didn't hook me personally.
Can we have like an armistice on these long main events? Like 40 plus minutes?
Oh yeah, don't watch Noah.
Well, I'm not even talking Noah, but like, it just, this weekend alone, like, the shortest main event we saw was a match that had to go over 30 minutes for story purposes and was an IWGP Championship match, and somehow all these other matches around it go even longer. It's like, obviously I hate, masturbatoriness in wrestling, but like, does anybody enjoy watching every single main event go over 40 minutes? There's so much other shit that you could do in that time. Well, like watch Dinner Date.
That's that's the thing about this card was so weird. It was so weirdly timed out. Like I said, the women's match went really short, but as you said, it may be because Tony was hurt. The tag title, like, scramble tag match went 20 minutes. The main event went 45 minutes. And then it was like they felt they needed to fill the show out. But then they had people like Pete Dunne, Jordan Devlin, Chris Hero not on the show at all. I mean, it's in Cardiff. Wild Boar wasn't on the show at all. Rhea Ripley was relegated to the pre-show. Like, what's going on here? You couldn't cut like some needless time off one of those two extraordinarily needlessly long matches to put one of them on the show. I mean, I guess it all comes back to the problem of that
6 matches, isn't it?
Well, also it's NXT UK isn't like a real promotion. They don't like they're just there to stop other people using people. So they're not actually trying to draw. So they don't need to put their stars on the card to draw because they don't actually care. It's not a show that matters. They don't, despite Pete Dunne probably being the biggest star on that brand, they don't need to put him on the show because they don't really care what they draw. They just want they just use it as a holding pattern to stop people being signed other places, unfortunately. So yeah, that's NXT UK, FakeOver, WWE Universe, Cardiff, Takeover, etc, 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 with like a million different colons in the name. I was thoroughly pleased with my decision to go to the New Japan show instead of the NXT UK show, but I was actually, you know what really got a chuckle out of me? Seeing the NXT UK show announced that they were sold out while still selling tickets and cordoning off half the arena. Like, what the fuck?
Words don't mean anything anymore in the WWE universe. It's just whatever we say is the truth.
The show is they put a video out saying the show was sold out, and they were still selling tickets. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, if selling tickets mattered for that promotion, and obviously it doesn't because NXT UK doesn't matter. But if selling tickets mattered, can you imagine telling people, oh, you can't buy tickets anymore, so don't bother trying, while still selling tickets? Like, what the fuck is going on there? Jesus Christ. Right, so that's the 3 big shows covered. We've got some news stuff to go over now before we close up the episode.
All right,
shall we discuss OWE UK?
Shall we? Their Twitter has disappeared. I just went looking for it, but it's not there anymore. So this delayed tour, by the way, is highly likely to be permanently delayed.
Yeah, the OWE UK tour has been delayed, not cancelled, due to unforeseen circumstances, We will be making further announcements as soon as we finalise things. But yes, having deleted their Twitter account, I'm not sure where they're going to make these announcements. So it has been a bit of a mess, to say the least. And very difficult to sort of find out what is actually going on here, because the actual OWE China account is saying different things to the OWE UK account, or at least what it was saying before it has disappeared. And then you've got Sean McMahon, who was one of the promoters, one of the directors, I think he was calling himself, of Martialism Sport and Culture Communication UK, trading as OWE United Kingdom. And he's been making his own comments on his personal Facebook page. He said, "I've decided to resign as a director due to what I feel is the misconduct of the director and OWE China," which is a little bit confusing, but I think basically he had a disagreement with the people he was running the UK side of things with, as well as the Chinese operation.
Well, I don't think the Chinese
but also,
part of the operation were aware that there was a problem.
Well, the Shima tweeting "What's happened" in all caps is definitely a runner for tweeter of the year, and it would have been the funniest tweet of the week had it not been for a little bit of a bubbler.
Yeah, it's kind of worrying. I'm trying to remember what the company is that Sean McMahon is connected to. Is it him, or is it the other guy that's connected to TNT?
Yeah, that's the
Jay
other
Apter.
guy, Jay Apter, who I believe is the other director in question.
Yeah, he's head of UK creative, Jay Apter. Yeah, apparently he's saying this has nothing to do with TNT. Basically, I think he's washed his hands of the whole thing.
Yeah, but all the payment went through to his company, nothing else on TV, which has also disappeared on Twitter.
Did you see
wrestling the money back off of him might be difficult?
Jay Apter's Facebook statement concluded with, "On behalf of myself and TNT, we wish OWE and OWE UK all the best in their future endeavours."
That says it all, doesn't it? It's just, it's a ghost ship.
What the...
You'd have thought that line would have come from the McMahon of the people.
Touche. Yeah, this is a really weird.
And was Sean McMahon? I'm like the word midget has been getting thrown around. Was he the one running the Little People wrestling show, or was it somebody else?
I don't know. I feel like there is disreputable stuff going on here, and
yeah, to say the least. He's changed the address that the company belongs to something else. Apparently, according to the comments underneath the Facebook post from OWE, it all just seems like a whole bunch of mucky stuff going on.
Yeah, and he also threatened someone who writes for the Daily Mirror today. So it's been a red letter day for the McMahon family, UK branch.
So I think it's fair to say that this delayed tour will probably not be a delayed tour, and instead a cancelled tour. What they were gonna do, I think it was 2 shows at the Dome and then 2 shows in Liverpool, in December, and they were bringing in a crazy bunch of talent. Like
there is no way any of those shows would have turned anything approaching a profit.
No, it was a very strange venture, to say the least. And they were bringing in all the Chinese guys as well. I mean, it would have been a hell of a show to go to.
I was going to go to the Wednesday at the Dome just to go and see all the Chinese guys.
So,
it would have been crazy to see.
So I've had some contact from kind of 2 different ends. One from kind of the BritWres side of things, and one from somebody kind of second hand from someone who's been talking to OWE on the China side of things. And basically, what I've been told since the very start, before any of this kind of bullshit came out, was that this was always something that was very, very loosely associated with OWE. And essentially what it was is someone in the UK wanted to take advantage of AEW, but couldn't get a relationship with AEW. So they thought, well, if we talk to the Chinese people and get allowed to brand ourselves as OWE UK, because they're affiliated with AEW, we'll get some AEW fans. And it was kind of like, so they went to OWE and they said, can we use your name for our new startup promotion? And they went, yes, as long as you book a few of our guys, because, and this is kind of the crucial bit, we want our guys to work in the UK and get visas in the UK and show that they don't overstay their welcome in the UK. Overstay their visa in the UK, because then we feel we may be able to present that to the US and help with the visa situation over there. And that was kind of the deal there. It was like, right, we'll book your guys. And I also had it insinuated that they weren't going to be paying for any of the OWE talent. It was kind of going to be like,
favour for a favour.
Yeah. That they'll come over, work your shows, just to show that they will come over and work a show and then leave when the visa's up. That's what I've been told. I don't have that double source, so that may need, I can only go off what I've been told, but that's kind of the story I've got there. And when you see how things have all played out, that kind of seems to add up somewhat. They were apparently, the messages I was getting was that OWE, like the Chinese section of OWE, had not been particularly happy with the way that the communication had been going for a little bit. And obviously this was an explosion of it, but, it hadn't been happy campers for a while.
I heard a suggestion that ticket sales were quite bad, and that was a contributing factor.
Right, yeah. And, like, you can see over in... This is a different situation to, like, OWE when they did the shows in Canada. That was for the same purpose. It was that we're going to get a visa for Canada and show that we're going to go to Canada, not overstay our visa, and then show that to the US and go, look, we won't overstay our visas, we promise. Look, give us a visa, please. But that was like... OWE were far more hands-on there, and while they did lose money there, that was kind of like we'll run the show for this purpose, for the visa purpose, basically. This was a separate company running the show, so them losing money kind of has necessarily led to the shows no longer existing. Which, it's nice we got that whole boom out of the way. Now we can go back to old school BritWres where shows are getting cancelled all the time. Promoters are telling on each other to get shows banned, etc., etc.
Which has absolutely nothing to do with the Breed cancellation that we're going to talk about as well.
Oh, my life.
So...
Imagine being such a rat, like, honestly.
I'm not saying that a rival promoter has ratted them out to the council for not having the correct license, which then takes... I can't remember how many days it was. It was 5 days notice. So it's like they deliberately timed it so it was right at the cutoff. But they basically grassed them up for not having the right license. Breed were of the opinion that they did have the right license. But when the council went digging around, they discovered they did not. I've spoken to a couple of other promoters about it. And they've basically said, I've never heard of that license before. I think they've been right fucked. So,
shockingly, there's not much precedent for running wrestling in a cave.
But somebody's obviously done a lot of research on it and thought this was a fine opportunity to completely fuck up the weekend for everyone that was attending that Breed show, making them, a bit more buyer beware about Breed in the future, which absolutely sucks for them because, they've been trying really hard this year.
Yeah, and this cave show was like a big chance to sort of like, they've sort of been branded as a bit extra by the community, but like everybody was really on board with the cave wrestling stuff, like even the people who they had maybe previously annoyed in the past. Like this was sort of their second coming out party in a way. It's like, we're cool, we're relevant, we're doing interesting
Daniel
stuff.
Maccabi over from Canada for it.
That's such a shame.
I know. I feel bad for Daniel because now that was the big show that he was on. He's tried to get himself rebooked for the Sunday, but basically nobody's running. So he's going to come over and wrestle in Hex, a nightclub in Sheffield in front of like 200 people. And that'll be his UK experience. I hope he has a much nicer time.
Can these grasses not just get like another hobby at all. Like, take up video games or something. Like, why do people have to do this?
If you're a snitch, you're going to the lowest circle of hell. Yeah. All those people who tag Jim Cornette on Twitter, you'll be next to the cunt that ruined this show. I did actually ask. I went and had a chat with Mitch from Breed and asked who he thought had done it, and he's like, I don't want to talk about it. So I'll be going up. I'll go to the Hex show on the Saturday, and I'll have a nice time. But yeah, it sucks for all the wrestlers who got fucked over for the show. It sucks for all the fans that had tickets to it, and it just sucks in general. It's terrible for the promotion. It's terrible for the wrestling in this company. And if that is your mentality, that let's go and snitch out this other company for personal, petty, selfish gain, then you've been watching the Houses of Commons debate too much.
Oh, my life.
Yeah, I'm pretty pissed off about that, to be honest. That's very disappointing. And I'm glad that people understand, but I'm also aware that how likely are you to book a ticket to Breed knowing that they might get the rug pulled out from under them by somebody snitching them out again? Even if they were extremely careful with the licenses for this show, and yet apparently they were missing one somewhere. So it's really hard being a promoter. I do not recommend it.
It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
To be wrapping up on.
It hasn't been the most joyful podcast, really.
I've had a nice time.
BritWres is fine. BritWres is fine.
I enjoyed Rob's very impassioned rant.
Just some some closing stuff, some odds and ends that we'll sort out. If you've listened to any of the other podcasts on this network recently, you've probably heard as a Voice of the Wrestling Podcast Network, we're moving over from Audio Boom over to Red Circle. Now this, for those listening, should make very, very little difference. Everything, the RSS should be continuing, so you shouldn't need to refresh your podcast or anything. If you do have problems with it, then maybe try unsubscribing and resubscribing, but really if you're listening to this, then you've probably figured that out already, given that you're listening to this. Some of the two small changes that will happen is you may notice that the number of this episode is very different to the number of the last episode. That's because Audio Boom had a function for seasons, so somewhere along the line, I don't necessarily completely remember the reason why we did it, but we changed from we got to 50 episodes, and then we went to season 2 of the show after taking a 4 or 5 month break or something. Because that's not a feature for Red Circle, although they're wonderful in many other ways, we're going to continue our total numbering, so we're up to episode 80 or something now, just so that we don't have 2 episode 33s or something, because that could get a bit weird. So if you do notice that, that's why. And secondly, over on the Red Circle website, under the BritWres Roundtable, there is an option called Sponsor the Podcast, and this works a little bit like Patreon, or where if you do want to give us money, you can. Now, we're not going to push to that too much because, for one, we don't necessarily release a particularly regular podcast, and two, we're not particularly shill-heavy people, especially Arn. He'll curse me out if I plug it too much.
I don't know if you listened to the podcast where you weren't on it. Well, you must have done because you edited it, but I actually did the full Voices of Wrestling plug at the end of it, and I did it word perfect.
You did. I was very proud. So yeah, if that is a thing, if you do feel you want to do that, but if you don't, that's obviously completely fine. We're happy that you listen. The options there, I think there's one-off donation and also monthly thing. Yeah, so if you want to do that, you can, but we're not going to continuously reference it or push towards it. It's whatever. But if you do, we would appreciate it. It will buy an extra pint in the Dundee Arms or whatever.
At those prices?
Plugs.
Good Lord, no. We'll have to go to the Wetherspoons.
That's true. The spiritual home of BritWres, Wetherspoons. Ollie, do you have anything to plug?
Well, my Twitter, another Ollie. I'm back, sort of, and I'm aiming to maybe do another Twitch stream next week and find out who wins the very prestigious Ollie Cup. So I will drop that on the Twitter as well.
That's Fire Pro, right?
Fire Pro Wrestling.
There we go. Just to be clear.
Yeah, I'm not actually booking a show. This isn't Arm Pro.
I'm also not actually booking a show. I have had people actually DM me about that. Some wrestlers may have done. I am not booking a show. It's not happening. You can find me on Twitter, though. I'm at Arnold Furious. I currently don't have a website, so you can kind of catch my reviews over on 411 Mania. And hopefully the website will be back at some point.
Those damn hackers.
Yeah, they fucking ruined it, mate. They just smashed the whole place up. Like online vandalism.
Very
Probably
rude.
the same guy who...
Very rude.
Same guy who cancelled BritWres.
Yeah. So I got a bit of a cough. You might have to cut that out, actually.
Yeah, do you want me to cut that out?
Yeah, you probably should.
Yeah, okay, I'll cut that out. In fact, I'll beep that because it's funnier.
Okay, yeah, that'd be better.
Oh, you can follow me over at BritWres Round, where for all my wrestling takes and angriness and various things. Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. Oh, and on the other side of the credits, there may or may not be, depending on how lazy and how much I remember to do the edit, there may be a little treat from the Dundee Arms as a kind of a post-credits scene. So if you fancy it, stick around for that. See you whenever we record the next one of these, which is completely random. So it'll be a nice surprise for you and probably a surprise for us too. Bye.
In my defence, I've been drinking for quite a long time.
Is you fucking embarrassing what he's just delivered this evening? What do you say? Tonight, he fucking ruined that company. Yeah. I agree. They fucking ruined that company. I'm mad at him about this. Because I was proud of as a kid. I was proud of those fucking records. I was proud of going there. Because I was proud of what they were doing. I was proud of what they put together. And they have fucking ruined it. That's what they've done. They've fucking ruined it. What they've done tonight, but they've fucked everybody that has been going to those shows for the last 5 fucking years, and they've been following the booking, and they've been following what they've been doing, and I feel like, no, I'll do that. How have they fucking so fucking bad? Why have they done that to me? Why have they done that to me? Why? I completely agree with John. Don't worry. I'm mad.